The stars were cold and silent in the endless night of space. A single human explorer stood on the surface of a strange alien world. His name was Daniel, and he came from Earth. But today he felt very far from home. The air was thin. The sky had 2 moons, and in the distance giant towers of crystal shined like frozen fire. Daniel had come as a guest, invited by the alien people called the Sarai. They were tall, graceful, and their skin carried a faint glow like moonlight on water. Among them was a young girl, curious and playful. Her name was Lyra. She laughed often, and she loved to tease Daniel about how clumsy humans looked among her people. That night, in the grand hall of her clan, the aliens gathered around old relics of their ancestors. The walls were filled with carvings of ancient wars and forgotten heroes. Lyra pulled Daniel's hand and whispered with a mischievous smile, "Come with me. I want to show you something special." She led him to a chamber hidden behind heavy stone doors. Inside the chamber stood a suit of armor, dark as the void, with faint silver lines running across its surface. It rested on a tall stand. Glowing softly, as if alive, Lyra's eyes sparkled. She looked at Daniel and said, "This belonged to one of our greatest warriors. It is just a story now, a relic, nothing more." Daniel stared at the armor. He could feel something in the air, like static, like the moment before lightning. He said softly, "It looks dangerous." Lyra laughed and pushed him lightly. "Dangerous? It would never even fit you, human. It is only for Sarai blood." Her voice was playful, but her eyes carried the thrill of testing fate. She stepped closer to the armor, pressed a hidden symbol on the stand, and the armor began to shift. Chest plate opened like a blooming flower. The gauntlets unfolded, and the whole thing looked ready for someone to step inside. "Go on," Lyra teased. "Try it. Just for a joke." Daniel hesitated. He shook his head. "No, this is not a good idea." But the crowd of young Sarai behind Lyra laughed and shouted, "Yes, let the human wear it. Let him try." The sound echoed in the chamber, filling the silence with pressure. Daniel finally gave a nervous smile and stepped forward. The moment his fingers touched the cold surface of the armor, the chamber grew still. Every Sarai fell silent. Their glowing eyes widened. The silver lines on the armor flared to life. Rushing with light like rivers of fire, the armor responded. To him, not to Lyra, not to her people, but to him, a human. Gasps filled the hall. Whispers spread like wind. Daniel felt his heart race. His skin burned with strange energy. The armor moved by itself, wrapping around his arms, his chest, his legs, each piece locked in place with a sound like thunder. Lyra stepped back in shock, her smile fading. This is not possible," she whispered. Daniel's eyes glowed faintly as the helmet closed around his head. He felt something awakening deep inside him, something not his own, but still a part of him. The armor stood complete, shining with ancient power. Daniel could hear voices, not in his ears, but in his mind, old words, old songs, a language he did not understand, but somehow felt. His body trembled, yet the armor held him strong, like it had been waiting for him. The elders of the Sarai rushed into the chamber, their faces pale with fear. One of them spoke in a trembling voice. "The prophecy, it has begun." Daniel turned toward them. His voice echoed with strange power. "I did not mean to. I only touched it." The elder raised his hand, his voice heavy like stone. "No, human, you did not choose the armor. The armor chose you." Lyra looked at Daniel. Her playful eyes now filled with fear and awe. She whispered, "What have I done?" The chamber shook as if the world itself had felt the awakening. The relics on the walls vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, far beyond the city, ancient machines buried in the sand stirred with forgotten life. The ground hummed with low thunder, as if something greater had been awakened too. Daniel tried to remove the armor, but it clung to him. The light from its veins pulsed like a heartbeat, beating in time with his own. The Sarai whispered around him, their voices filled with fear. The outsider has awakened the legacy. The human carries the power. Daniel looked at Lyra, his voice low and shaking. This was just a joke, wasn't it? But no one laughed anymore. The chamber was heavy with silence, the kind that comes before a storm. And deep in the shadows beyond the alien city, something ancient opened its eyes for the first time in thousands of years. The glow from the armor lit the chamber like a rising sun. Silver lines ran across Daniel's body. Pulsing like living veins, the Sarai gathered around him. Their faces pale and frightened, the air felt heavy, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Lyra's playful smile was gone, replaced by wide eyes filled with shock. She had meant it as a harmless trick, a little fun at the human's expense. But now her hands trembled as she whispered, "It was not supposed to do this." Her voice broke the silence, yet no one laughed with her. Daniel raised his arm. The black gauntlet gleamed. He felt strange energy rushing through him, heavy yet powerful. It was like his muscles were not his own, like something ancient was moving inside him. He staggered back, almost falling, but the armor held him steady. The elders stepped forward, robes flowing like shadows, their glowing eyes fixed on Daniel with fear and awe. One elder's voice cracked like thunder. "It has chosen, after all this time, it has chosen a human." The words echoed, bouncing off the stone walls like a curse. Daniel shook his head, his breath fast, his voice shaky. "No, I didn't choose anything. I didn't want this." But the armor pulsed again, its light answering him like a heartbeat. It clung tighter, as if it feared being taken away. The younger Sarai whispered to one another, voices filled with panic. "Why him? He is not Sarai. He is not of our blood. Perhaps the prophecy is true. Perhaps the outsider was always meant to wear it." Each whisper made the chamber colder, heavier with dread. Daniel tried to pull off the helmet, his fingers clawing at its edges, but it would not move. It was as if the armor had melted into his skin. The helmet's eyes flared with light, and in that moment he saw flashes. Not his memories, but someone else's, someone ancient. He saw a battlefield of fire and ash, armies of machines crawling like insects across ruined land, a warrior in the same armor striking them down, each blow like a storm. He saw the sky burn, and he heard screams of victory and sorrow. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping. The vision ended as fast as it began, but his chest felt heavy. Lyra rushed to him, placing her glowing hand on his shoulder. Her voice trembled. "What did you see?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes glowing faintly like hers. "I saw a war. I saw death. I saw this armor fighting enemies I cannot name." The words made the elders exchange worried glances. One of them whispered, "The memory of the ancestor lives in the suit." The chamber shook again, dust falling from the ceiling. A low hum spread through the city above, like distant drums. The alien crowd grew restless, their voices rising. Why does the armor awaken now? Why for him? Lyra stared at Daniel, guilt heavy in her chest. She had dragged him here for fun, to mock the clumsy human. Now the fate of her people seemed tied to him. Her heart raced as she asked herself if she had made the greatest mistake of her life. Daniel stood slowly, armor moving with him, every step heavy but steady. He raised his arm again, and the air rippled like water. The crowd gasped as the floor cracked beneath his boots. Power leaked out of him like smoke, uncontrolled, raw, terrifying. "Stop," the elder commanded, his voice shaking but strong. "You must not release more energy. The city cannot bear it." Daniel backed away, his eyes wide. "I don't know how to stop it. I don't even know what I'm doing." The armor pulsed brighter, as if feeding on his fear. Outside, across the valley, something stirred. Buried machines that had slept for ages suddenly twitched. Their red eyes lit up one by one. Sensing the awakened power, Metal claws broke free from the sand, old guardians rising from forgotten graves. Inside the chamber, the hum grew louder. The Sarai children clutched their parents, their glowing skin dimming with fear. One elder whispered to another, "The enemy will sense it. They will return. The cycle begins again." Lyra's eyes snapped to Daniel, her voice shaking. "This is my fault. I brought him here." But another elder raised a hand, silencing her. "No, child. This was written long before your birth. The armor chose him because the time's come." The words filled Daniel with cold dread. He had never believed in destiny, but now destiny wrapped his body like chains. The ground outside shook, a deep rumble rolling through the city. From the balcony above the chamber, the Sarai saw fire on the horizon. Machines moving, eyes burning red, marching toward them like a storm. The prophecy had woken more than just the armor. It had woken the enemy. Daniel clenched his fists, the armor glowing brighter than before. The crowd looked to him, fear and hope in their glowing eyes. He wanted to run. He wanted to hide, but the armor held him like iron. It whispered in his mind, a voice deep and ancient. "Stand, fight, become what you were meant to be." Daniel's breath caught. Sweat rolled down his face inside the helmet. He whispered back, "I'm just human. I'm nobody." But the voice in the armor thundered, "You are more. You are chosen." And with those words, the walls of the chamber cracked. The joke was over, and the true war had begun. The ground outside shook harder. The old guardians rising from the sand, their metal bodies glowing red in the dark night. The Sarai city was no longer silent. Alarms rang out across the crystal towers. Voices of fear spread through the streets like fire. And in the chamber below, all eyes stayed fixed on the human inside the armor. Daniel could feel it now, the strange current flowing through every nerve of his body. It was not pain, not exactly, but a burning power that refused to rest. He felt taller, heavier, stronger, as if his bones had turned to iron. The armor's heartbeat matched his own, two rhythms becoming one. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt less like a man and more like a weapon. Lyra stepped closer, her glowing hands trembling as she reached for him. Her voice cracked with fear and awe. "Daniel, can you hear me? Are you still yourself?" His eyes glowed faint blue through the helmet. His voice came out deeper, carried by the armor. "I don't know what I am anymore," one elder raised his staff, pointing at Daniel with shaking hands. "This is the awakening, the legend of our ancestors." The armor was never meant to rest forever. It was waiting for the one it would choose. But his words did not bring comfort. They brought fear, because outside the rumble grew louder. As if the entire desert was waking, Daniel staggered forward, each step heavier than the last. The armor guided his movements, pulling him toward the chamber doors. He tried to resist, tried to stop, but the suit moved like it had a mind of its own. It whispered to him again, words that thundered inside. His skull. "Walk, rise, fight." Lyra rushed in front of him, blocking his way, her eyes wide, her voice desperate. "Stop. The armor is not a toy. It is alive, it is dangerous. It will consume you." But Daniel only shook his head slowly, his voice echoing with layers not his own. "I can feel everything. Every stone in the floor, every breath in this room, even the machines outside. I feel them moving toward us." Gasps filled the chamber. The Sarai stepped back in fear, because they realized he was not only wearing the armor, he was becoming part of it. Daniel raised his hand, and the air rippled like a pond struck by a stone. Blue sparks cracked around his fingers, leaping into the walls. The carvings of the ancestors lit up, glowing as if they too remembered the wars of the past. Suddenly, his vision split in two. In one eye, he saw the chamber, the Sarai, the fear. In the other, he saw the battlefield, the desert outside, the red machines crawling forward. He could count them, measure their distance. as if the armor's senses were feeding directly into his mind. He whispered in a trembling voice, "They are coming. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands." The Sarai panicked, voices rising. "The Guardians have awakened. They will destroy the city. They have not moved for centuries." "Why now? Why at this moment?" The elders looked at Daniel, their faces carved with fear. One finally said, "Because the armor has awakened its warrior, and the enemy always follows." Daniel clenched his fists, the gauntlets flaring with power. He felt like he could smash through stone walls, leap across valleys, burn through steel. But he also felt the danger, the temptation. The armor whispered promises of endless strength. Yet deep inside, a small part of him wondered if he was still Daniel, or if he was becoming something else. Lyra touched his arm, her voice softer now. "Listen to me. Don't let it control you. You are still human. You are still you." For a moment, her words cut through the storm in his mind, but then the ground split open. The first of the machines broke through the surface above the city. The sound was like thunder mixed with screaming metal. Daniel's vision sharpened instantly through the armor. He could see the machines. Even without looking, he saw their shapes, their weapons, their numbers. It was as if the armor was feeding him knowledge, older than Earth itself. He whispered with dread, "They are hunting me." The chamber doors burst open. Young Sarai warriors rushed in with glowing spears, but the elders stopped them, raising their hands. "Do not attack. The human must be the one to face this trial. The armor has bound him." The young warriors hesitated, staring at Daniel like he was both savior and curse. Daniel turned to Lyra, his voice shaking with both fear and power. "I don't know if I can fight them. I don't even know how to use this." But the armor answered for him, pulling his body upright, his chest plate blazing with silver light. A deep voice, not human, roared inside his head. "You will learn. You will remember. You were always meant to be this." The machines outside screamed as their weapons charged, red light flooding this valley. The Sarai city prepared for war, the people hiding, the soldiers gathering, but all eyes still turned to Daniel, the outsider, the human, the chosen. And in that terrible moment, Daniel realized something horrifying. The armor was not only giving him power, it was unlocking something that was already inside him. His heart pounded as he whispered, almost too soft to hear, "What if this power was always mine?" The armor glowed brighter in answer. The ground shook again, and the first machine screamed as it fired its weapon toward the city walls. The war had begun, and Daniel's true awakening had only just started. The night sky burned red as the ancient machines rose from the desert. Their bodies were made of black metal, their limbs long and sharp, their eyes glowing like molten fire. They moved in silence, hundreds of them, crawling toward the crystal towers of the Sarai city. Each step shook the ground, each movement felt heavy with purpose. Inside the chamber, Daniel felt every one of them. The armor carried their presence into his mind, showing him their paths, their numbers, their weapons. He could sense them like predators stalking their prey. And in his chest, the armor pulsed brighter, as if calling for battle. The Sarai people above screamed as the first machines reached the outer gates. Their glowing spears struck the metal bodies, but sparks flew uselessly. The machines crushed stone walls as if they were sand. The air was filled with the sound of breaking crystal and the cries of fear. Daniel staggered toward the open doors. The armor was dragging him forward, but part of him wanted to go. He looked at Lyra, her glowing eyes wide with fear and hope. He whispered through the helmet, "I don't know if this power belongs to me, but I cannot stand still." The elders stepped aside, their voices heavy. "The trial begins now. If you survive, the city may live. If you fail, we are lost." Daniel clenched his fists. The gauntlets hummed with raw energy, and the ground cracked beneath him as he took his first step into the night. The machines turned their red eyes toward him, as if they could feel the armor too. A deep vibration shook the desert, and from the front line, 3 massive guardians stepped forward. Their bodies were larger than houses, their claws like blades, their shoulders armed with glowing cannons. They roared in unison, a sound of grinding steel and ancient hate. Daniel's legs moved before his mind could catch up. The armor guided him, running faster than he ever imagined possible. The sand blurred under his feet. The wind screamed in his ears, and in a heartbeat he was. Standing before the first machine, it swung its metal claw down. The strike could crush a tower, but Daniel raised his arm, and the gauntlet blazed with blue light. The claw hit him with earth-shaking force, but the armor absorbed it. Holding steady, the ground exploded with dust, but Daniel stood unbroken. Gasps filled the city walls where the Sarai watched. They had never seen their ancient armor move again. And now it moved on a human. Daniel's body shook under the power, but his voice roared through the helmet. "I am still here," the armor responded, energy rushing into his arm. He swung his fist upward, striking the machine's chest. Impact was like a thunderclap. The metal cracked open, glowing circuits spilling out like fire. The machine screamed with a sound that was not alive, but still full of pain. The other 2 charged, their cannons glowing red. Daniel turned just as they fired, twin beams of burning light streaking through the night. His body moved on its own, the armor pulling him into a leap. He flew higher than any human should, landing on the shoulder of the nearest machine. The city below roared in disbelief. Daniel gripped the armor spikes, his gauntlet glowing with power. He drove his hand deep into the machine's core. Blue lightning exploding outward. The guardian collapsed, sparks raining like falling stars. But the third machine swung its claw, striking him midair. A blow sent him crashing into the sand. The ground shook with the impact. For a moment, Daniel lay still. The Sarai gasped, fearing he was broken. Then the sand erupted, and he rose again, glowing brighter than before. The armor pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. His eyes burned blue. His voice thundered across the desert. "You want me? Then come for me." The machines answered with a roar. Dozens more breaking from the ground, red eyes burning. The Sarai. Soldiers shouted from the walls. "More are coming, too many. He cannot fight them all." But the elders shook their heads, their voices heavy with faith and fear. He must. This is his trial. This is the will of the armor. Daniel felt the weight of their words like chains. He was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for a city that was not even his. He wanted to scream that he was only human, but the armor gave him no choice. It filled him with fire, with strength, with the will of something far older than Earth. The machines charged, the ground quaking like an earthquake. Daniel clenched his fists, the blue light flaring so bright it turned night into day. He ran forward, the armor guiding him into the storm of metal and fire. And in that moment, the true battle began. The battlefield was silent for only a moment. The broken machines smoking in the sand. Daniel stood tall, his body shaking inside the armor, his breath heavy and sharp. The blue light along his chest flickered, then glowed steady, as if the suit itself was alive and breathing with him. The Sarai city behind him echoed with voices of shock and fear, but also with awe. Lyra rushed to him. Across the broken ground, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She reached for his arm, but pulled back when the blue sparks leapt from his gauntlet. Her voice was soft but urgent. "Daniel, you fought like no human should. This armor is not only wearing you, it is speaking through you." Daniel turned his helmet toward her, his voice deepened by the echo of the suit. "I don't know if it's speaking, or if it's remembering." The elders descended from the walls, their robes dragging against the sand. They formed a circle around Daniel, their glowing hands raised like torches. One of them, oldest of all, with lines carved deep into his face, stepped forward. He said in a voice heavy with sorrow, "The truth must be spoken now. There is no more hiding from the past." Daniel felt the armor tighten around him, as if it too wanted to hear. The elder lifted his staff and pointed to the distant carvings on the cliff wall. Shapes of warriors, battles, and storms of fire glowed faintly in the moonlight. Our people were not the first to wear that armor, the elder said. It was forged long before our time, by hands that were not only Sarai. Gasps rose from the crowd, and Daniel's heart pounded. Not Sarai, he asked, his voice trembling. Then who made it? The elder's eyes locked with his, glowing brighter than before. It was made by those who came before, warriors from the stars, beings who fought the endless machines when even our world was young. The chamber grew heavy with silence, the truth weighing on every word. Lyra stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. You mean humans? The elder nodded slowly, his glowing eyes never leaving Daniel. Your kind once walked among the stars long before you forgot, long before you fell into silence. The armor remembers, because it was built with your blood. Daniel staggered back, the sand cracking under his boots. His mind reeled. Earth was young. Humans barely touched the stars. Or so he thought. But here, on a world light years away, he stood inside proof that humanity's story was far older. The armor pulsed as if agreeing, its voice whispering again in his mind. You are never only human. You are always more. The Sarai crowd broke into cries of confusion and fear. Some shouted that he was chosen, others that he was cursed. Lyra turned on the elders, her voice sharp. Why did you keep this secret? Why did you never tell us the prophecy was about an outsider? The elder lowered his staff, his voice full of sorrow. Because we hoped the prophecy was wrong. We hoped the armor would sleep forever. But fate has no mercy. Daniel ripped off his helmet, his face drenched in sweat, his eyes glowing faint blue. He gasped for air, staring at the elders. You say this is fate. You say my people once wore this, but I don't believe in destiny. I don't want to be your savior. But the armor pulsed harder, its light flaring bright enough to blind. The voice inside thundered. Want or not, you have been chosen. Suddenly, Daniel's body locked as more visions crashed into his mind. He saw a human warrior standing where he stood now, thousands of years ago. The warrior's face was hidden, but his voice echoed through time. We fight until the end. We fight so others may live. We fight because it is what we are. Daniel screamed as the vision burned into him, his body shaking violently. Lyra grabbed him, holding him upright as the sparks tore across his armor. Her voice was desperate. Stay with me, Daniel. You are still yourself. Don't let it consume you. But his eyes burned brighter, and his voice carried two tones, his own and the echo of the past. I am not alone. I am standing where others stood. I am their memory. The elder stepped closer, fear and reverence in his voice. The truth is clear, human. The armor is not only a weapon, it is a vessel of memory. It carries the will of those who wore it before, and now their will lives inside you. Daniel dropped to his knees, sand grinding under the heavy armor. The realization weighed on him like stone. He was not just fighting machines. He was fighting the destiny of forgotten humanity. The city shook again as another roar echoed. From the horizon, more machines were rising, larger and deadlier, their red eyes burning through the darkness. The Sarai panicked, running to defend their walls, but all eyes still flicked back to Daniel, to the human who carried the armor of gods. Lyra helped him stand, her voice soft but firm. You may not believe in destiny, but destiny believes in you. Daniel looked at her, his face pale, his voice low. If what you say is true, then the armor didn't awaken me. It reminded me of what I already was. The elder raised his staff one final time. Then remember this too, human. The enemy that comes for you now is the same enemy that came before, and they will not stop until either you fall or they do. Daniel looked toward the red horizon, the glow of endless machines. The armor pulsed like a second heartbeat, and he knew the real war had not even begun yet. The desert horizon burned red with the glow of countless machines. The ground trembled as their endless legs tore through the sand, their claws grinding stone to dust. From the city walls, the Sarai watched in silence, fear freezing their glowing faces. For every guardian that fell, 10 more seemed to rise. Daniel stood on the battlefield, the armor pulsing brighter with each heartbeat. His chest rose and fell, his breath heavy, his body shaking from the battle before. Yet the armor showed him more than his human eyes could see. It whispered to him the truth. These are not their strongest. The true enemy is still coming. Lyra rushed to his side, her eyes wide with panic. You cannot fight them all, Daniel, not even with the armor. There are too many. Daniel's voice echoed deep inside the helmet, layered with the tone of something older. I feel them. They are not only machines. Something commands them. Something greater waits in the shadows. The elders gathered behind the city gates, their voices heavy with dread. This is the return of the hive mind, one whispered. The enemy that once consumed whole worlds. Another added, we prayed its memory was only legend, but it has returned to finish what it began. The crowd murmured, their fear spreading like wildfire. Daniel gripped his fists, the gauntlets flaring with lightning. He could sense it too, far beyond the horizon, a presence colder than space itself. It pressed against his mind like a shadow, vast, endless, watching him. He whispered under his breath, it knows me. It is searching for me. The machines outside shifted their formation. They stopped their chaotic charge and stood still, rows of red eyes glowing in perfect lines. Then, as if guided by one mind, they parted, opening a path through their ranks, and from the darkness beyond, something larger began to rise. The ground cracked as a massive figure emerged. It was not a simple guardian. It was a towering war machine, black as night, taller than the city towers. Its chest burned with a red core like a living sun. Its face was smooth, featureless, except for a single blazing eye that locked onto Daniel. The Sarai screamed. Some dropped to their knees in terror. Lyra clutched Daniel's arm, her voice shaking. That is no guardian. That is a warlord. Only the ancestors ever faced such a monster. The elders bowed their heads, their voices grim. The prophecy is fulfilled. The armor awakened because the warlord has returned. Daniel's heart pounded. His body felt small under the giant's shadow. Yet the armor did not fear. Its pulse grew steady, strong. It whispered into his mind, this is the true trial. If you fall here, all will fall with you. Daniel clenched his teeth, sweat dripping down his face inside the helmet. I never asked for this, but I can't run. The warlord raised its massive arm, the cannon on its shoulder glowing red. The sky itself seemed to burn as the weapon charged. In that moment, Daniel's vision split again. He saw not only the battlefield, but memories of the past. The Ancestor stood where he stood, wearing the same armor. The same warlord stood across from him, its eye blazing with hate. The Ancestor's voice echoed through Daniel's mind. I fought it before. I fell before, but you must not. Daniel roared as the cannon fired, a beam of burning energy racing toward the city. His body moved on its own, the armor reacting. Faster than thought, a wall of blue light erupted from his chestplate, a shield of pure energy. The beam struck. The world exploded in fire and thunder. But when the smoke cleared, Daniel was still standing, the shield cracked but unbroken. The Sarai gasped in disbelief. They had never seen such power, not even in their legends. Daniel staggered, the armor sparking from the impact, but his eyes burned brighter, his voice deepened. You will not take this world, the warlord tilted its head, as if studying him, and then a voice entered Daniel's mind, cold and metallic. You are not Sarai, yet the armor accepts you, human. Your kind was erased long ago. How do you still exist? Daniel gritted his teeth, his voice a growl, because humanity always survives. The machines roared in unison. The warlord's core flared brighter. The ground cracked open as more. Guardians climbed from below. The Sarai city shook, its crystal towers bending under the tremors. And the people looked to Daniel the outsider, the one chosen by the armor. Lyra whispered through trembling lips, "You may not believe in destiny, Daniel, but destiny believes in you." Daniel stared at the warlord, his body trembling, his soul burning with fire. The armor whispered one last word in his mind, "Fight." And with a roar that shook the night, Daniel charged toward the warlord. The desert exploded with light and thunder as the final battle began. The desert shook like a living beast as Daniel charged forward. His footsteps cracked the ground, his armor blazing with silver light. Above him the warlord loomed, a tower of black steel. Its single red eye locked on him. The air burned with the weight of their clash, as if even the sky was afraid. The Sarai on the walls held their breath, their glowing bodies trembling with fear and hope. Children clung to their parents, warriors, tightened their grips on glowing spears, but none moved, none spoke. Because all eyes were on the human wrapped in the armor of their ancestors, the warlord raised its colossal arm, claws glowing with red fire. Daniel leapt into the air, higher than any human should. Guided by the will of the suit, the clash shook the night, claw against gauntlet, red against blue. Sparks exploded like stars, the impact ringing across the valley. The force threw Daniel back, crashing into the sand with a quake that split the earth. He staggered to his feet, his armor sparking, his body aching. The warlord's voice echoed inside his skull, cold and endless. "You are weak human. Your kind fell once, and it will fall again." Daniel gritted his teeth, blood on his lips, but the armor pulsed brighter, voices rising inside his mind. They were not only his, they were many echoes of warriors long forgotten. "Stand, rise, fight. You carry us all." He roared and charged again, his fists blazing with lightning. Each strike shook the warlord's metal frame, cracks glowing blue against its black shell. But the warlord struck back, its claw slamming into his chest, sending him skidding across the battlefield. The city walls cracked under the impact. Dust and stone raining down, Lyra screamed from the gates, her voice breaking, "Daniel, you cannot fall. If you fall, we all fall." Her words cut through the storm inside his head. For a moment, he remembered he was not only a weapon, he was still human, still Daniel. The warlord raised its cannon again, the core burning like a sun. The Sarai cried out in terror. The light washed across the battlefield. Daniel staggered to his knees, his armor glowing faint, nearly broken. But then he whispered through clenched teeth, "No more running, no more fear." The armor answered him, flooding his body with fire. Every nerve burned, every bone screamed, but he felt alive. The voices of the ancestors rose in unison. "You are the last, but you are not alone," Daniel roared as he leapt into the air. The cannon fired, the beam of red energy tearing across the sky, but Daniel cut through it, his gauntlets blazing like suns. He drove himself into the warlord's chest, the impact shaking the world. The red core cracked, fire spilling into the night. The warlord staggered, its voice filled with fury and fear. "This is not possible. You are only human." Daniel's eyes burned brighter. His voice thundered with human rage. "I am human, and that is enough." With one final strike, he drove his fist into the core. Blue lightning exploded outward, tearing through the warlord's body. The giant machine screamed, its eye shattering its frame, collapsing into the sand. The battlefield lit up with fire and thunder. And then silence. The Sarai city erupted in cries, not of fear, but of hope. They had seen the impossible. A human standing against the greatest enemy of their history. Lyra ran to him, her hands glowing as she reached for his scorched armor. Her voice shook with both joy and fear. "Daniel, you did it. You destroyed it." But Daniel did not answer at first. He stood in the sand, the armor cracked, his chest heaving with breath. Inside his mind, the voices of the ancestors faded to whispers. But one remained, deep and steady. This was only the first. The hive mind will return. Daniel looked toward the horizon. Even as the warlord's body crumbled, the red glow did not vanish. In the far distance, deep in the desert, more lights flickered, countless and endless. The machines were not gone. They were waiting, preparing, watching. He pulled off his helmet, his face pale, sweat dripping, his eyes still glowing faintly. He whispered to Lyra, his voice heavy, "This is not over. This was only the beginning." The crowd fell silent, the Sarai realizing the same truth. The elders bowed their heads, their voices low. The prophecy was never about victory. It was about survival. Daniel clenched his fists, his body trembling but unbroken. He raised his gaze to the stars, his voice filled with defiance. "Then we will survive. We will fight. Humanity will not fall again." The armor pulsed once more, steady and strong, and in that moment the Sarai knew the war was far from finished. But for the first time in centuries, they also knew they were not alone. For a human now carried the fire of the ancestors, and that fire would not die. The desert winds howled across the battlefield, carrying the smoke of war into the endless night. The machines whispered in the distance, their eyes burning like 1,000 suns. And Daniel stood in the ruins, his armor cracked, but his spirit unbroken. The final stand had ended, but the true war had only begun.